Really appreciate being able to do this webinar, especially the first time I've done one called Ask Chris. So I figured this would be a great one to do, and I've been meaning to do this actually for a couple months now. So really excited to be able to have you on today, be able to address some of the questions you've given me, and definitely I'm open to questions along the way. Just know I do have about 3 or 4 questions here that I'm planning to address today, just to make sure we do that. So depending on how long it takes, how long I need to expound on that, my whole intention is to be able to answer your questions, whatever random questions they are, whether it's about money or business. I get asked questions all the time. I mean, my Facebook messages blow up with questions quite often, and so I figured this would be a great format to do that in, and be able to address some of those questions, and really just to make it more open to what's valuable to you, not just what's valuable to me. If you haven't done so already, if you don't know who I am, I invite you to go check out moneyripples.com. That's MONEYRIPPLES.com. And let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I know most of you pretty much know who I am, or at least know of me, but let me explain a little bit of where I've come from. I actually started out in college. I was actually a sociology major, and my whole intention is I wanted to become a business consultant. But I figured if I was going to be a business consultant, I should probably have some sort of business experience before I just try to figure out how to, tell people what to do in their businesses, right? And so I thought, well, I should start my own business, but what should I do? I had no clue how to do it. My mom is an entrepreneur, but my dad wasn't. They were very opposite that way. And so I thought, well, how am I going to do that? And the opportunity came up with one of my friends where he was interning at a financial firm. And something about that just kind of clicked with me. I said, that sounds kind of cool. I think I'll do that. And so I got interviewed and eventually got hired about a month or so later with this financial firm. And I ended up liking it. I ended up dropping out of college with 1 class to go, believe it or not. So I was 1 class away from my bachelor's and was an independent. And all I had to do was take my thesis and condense it, and I would have been having my bachelor's. But I dropped out, didn't go in the master's program in business, and from there, I did that for 4 years, but then realized, I said, I really just, there's just something wrong here. There's something not quite right, because I like results. I like proof. I like evidence. And when I was looking at people that were clients of financial advisors for decades, it wasn't working out. And so eventually I able to meet some friends, those that were millionaires, and I realized they were talking about money and business the exact opposite of how I was taught. So there's what everybody else was talking about here, but they were doing stuff over here very differently and thinking differently. And I realized that, especially when I met with my brother-in-law, that was a big difference. In fact, to tell you that story, my brother-in-law, I went to meet with him because he was the son of a very wealthy man here in Utah. And I knew that because he's successful and he's wealthy, I wanted to figure out how to basically get them to want to do business with me as a financial advisor. And so I came in with my best suit. If you notice, I never wear suits. It's very, very rare you'll ever see me in a suit. Maybe on Sunday, you might get lucky. But I wore my best suit, worked hours on this great presentation to try to impress him and all this kind of stuff. And then I went to his home and I gave him that presentation. He said, well, Chris, that's a great presentation. Well, let me understand this. You're saying that if I were to just give you $10,000 to play with today, you're saying you could probably give me maybe a 12% rate of return, or $1,200 this year, right? I said, that's right. Oh yeah, you're mine, because $1,200 is awesome. I mean, imagine what that's like after 40 years. Incredible. And so I said, that's right. He said, okay, well, great. Now, Chris, I can take $10,000. I could put a down payment on a semi-truck and make, in a few months, just a few months, $20,000. So here's your $1,200, but I can make $20,000 in a few months versus your $1,200 in a year if you get me that. So Chris, why would I invest with you? And just you not knowing exactly what to say, but going with my training, I just said, well, you should be diversified. You shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket. You can't just put it all in business. That's too risky. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard financial advisors say that since I said that phrase. My brother-in-law looked at me and just said, all right, cool, thanks. That was a good time. And even though I brought up a guy with me in my office, they talked for another hour and a half. Nothing happened. No business happened. It was pretty much a complete waste, to say the least. And but it wasn't a waste for me, because it taught me a valuable lesson, is that money's to be made. You don't have to just go invest money in the markets and things like that, because honestly, the markets don't do that well anyways. And so instead, we want to make sure we're doing things that actually produce results. And this is why a lot of times I have people invest money in their businesses and things like that. And so I eventually quit. I'm done with it. No more. I'm done. I'm out of here. And I'll never teach about money again. In fact, I feel like I'm a liar and a deceiver. Left March 2006, quit, resigned from that firm, only to later that year start to teach more casually and then start teaching more professionally at the very beginning of 2007. And ever since then, I've been doing what I've done for the last 7 years, really, almost 8 years actually. So that's kind of where I came from, and that's where I am. And I'll tell you, it was fun because by doing the opposite of what I've been taught, I was able to retire back in 2006. I was actually able to retire with very little savings. I was able to make pretty decent money and do what I'm doing today. And so I'm definitely excited to have you here because a lot of these questions kind of tie in with that. They bring in some business possible advice, and they bring in some financial advice, and marrying those two together because they really aren't separate, but bringing them together is a big deal. Now, I don't consider myself a business consultant, but a lot of things I do with money do overlap with business, especially when I've worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs, primarily where I've helped them save in the ballpark around $33,000 average per year. And that's just in the first year alone. A lot of that's ongoing from here on out. So anyways, you guys ready? We good? We're good to move on and start addressing these questions? Go ahead and type in a response just to let me know that you guys are still with me and you haven't fallen asleep and you're ready to have some questions addressed. Just in the little chat box there. Go. All right, you got it, John. So the first one I'm going to address was actually from a woman. I'll keep everybody kind of confidential here because I don't want to, if it's a little bit too personal, I don't want to bring that up. This one was from a woman who messaged me right when I was promoting this event. Didn't even know I was putting this on, but she was messaging me, and I said maybe I should just address it today, and so I will. This one was, should I consolidate my debts? So she's got lots of different credit cards, lots of different little payments and things like that, but they all kind of add up, don't they? And to the tune of about $450, $500 a month, give or take. And her thing is, hey, we're only in the hole about $150 a month, but we just don't have the cash to pay these things off. So should we use a consolidation company to do that? Should we consolidate these loans with a professional service? And she was asking for referrals, and I said, I'm sorry, I don't have any. And that would be my answer too, is sorry, I really don't have a good reference for somebody that does loan consolidations. I'm not saying they aren't out there, but it's been kind of a shady industry, and there's been a lot of bad reputation out there. So I really don't trust anybody that does that kind of stuff. I've been in a situation where for those of you that do know my story, I've been in a situation where worst time I was in the hole $16,000 a month. About half of that were probably a little bit more than half of that. About $10,000 or so of that money was debt payments. I was in the hole. So even if I was free, I wouldn't be in the hole. And that's the first thing I asked her, and I would ask you if you're in a similar situation is, first and foremost, even if you paid off all your loans, are you tracking your money closely enough to know whether or not you would actually be able to pay off those, to be able to really be positive cash flow? Because if you're not going to be positive cash flow, even after you're debt free, you're going to be right back in the debt again. And so it's not really going to serve you just by paying off all your debt. A lot of people get very emotional about this, and so that's why they want to do it. But you have to understand that debt is not bad. The payments and the things the effects of it can definitely create a bad situation, but it's neither good nor bad. It's just what it is. It's a cost. In many cases, I've had people not pay off credit cards sooner because I'd rather have them keep money in savings. And then lo and behold, some life event happens where they say, oh, thank you so much for not having me pay off that credit card early. Doesn't mean we don't pay it off, because eventually we do, but it's just in the right timing. And so if you can't consolidate, here are a few ideas. Even if you don't use a consolidation company, here's a few ideas. One is, do you have lines of credit? One thing I look at is, I look at lines of credit, especially those that have a low payment for a higher balance. And so I talk about it in my event. I do a wealth empowerment intensive a few times a year. Last one's coming up here in October, where I'll teach about the cash flow index, where I try to create a nice number to figure out, okay, what's going to be the best bang for your buck? If we pay something off, what's going to be a good bang for your buck? Or if we charge it, what's going to also get you the least payment for the amount of money you charge? And so, for example, if you have a card, if you were to charge $10,000 on that credit card, but it's only $100 a month, that's amazing for a credit card. I would transfer balances to that as much as possible. Or versus a $10,000 credit card paying $500 a month or $400 a month, you definitely don't want to be charging things to that, right? Because, for example, and this is where I first learned this about the cash flow index, is realize that I had one of my clients for the first time that we're talking about this little trick, and I've used this for my life as well, that I said, well, wait, if you actually, and I didn't have her use the credit card to pay off the car. I said, well, if we pay off this car and even charge up things on the credit card, so if we start charging up all the gasoline and groceries and everything you could possibly use a credit card for, you can't do it with your mortgage, right? But anything else that you're possibly charging up, charge up all that on your credit card, take the money you would have paid, use that to pay off your car loan, which you did in about a month or two. What ended up happening is that even though that credit card raised up in balance for the balance of the car loan, because the car loan was such a higher payment for the balance, she actually freed up about $250 a month net. So even though her credit card payment went up, her car payment was gone, freeing up overall $250 a month. To me, that would be awesome, right? So if you've got limits on your cards or other lines of credit, look to that. Look to see what you can do there. Other things, in her case, in this woman's case here, she didn't have really good credit. She's tried to increase her lines. The credit card companies wouldn't allow her to do that yet because she's had some late payments in the last year. And so I said, all right, well, even if you have bad FICO score credit, do you have good personal credit? Is there somebody that you have that you have a good personal credit with? This could be a family member or a close friend or somebody that way that you can figure out, well, how can I make this a win-win for them? Because if they really are like low payments for the balances, if they really have like a low index, well, then if that's the case, or sorry, not a low payment for the balance, but a high payment balance, if they are that way, you might say, well, hey, maybe I'll pull out calculator.net and figure out if I would get a lump sum of money to help free up this cash, how much per month would that be? How much per month would it be if I paid them at 6% or 7% a year in them over the next 2, 3, 5 years, whatever you decide to do? Because I'll tell you, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that have things like IRAs and 401ks that have no clue how to make money with it. They're hoping and praying for something like a 5, 6% rate of return on their IRAs, right? Maybe last year they've been happy, but now like the last month or so, they're like, crap, I just lost 5% in the market. That's not good, right? So, I mean, they're constantly like this. They would love to have a guaranteed return. And so you might say, well, hey, what if I gave somebody a 6 or 7% return on my money? Especially if they're a family member, some might do it for less. I had one client out in Idaho where I said, hey, let's go and refinance your loan. And eventually her father stepped in and said, listen, I've got an IRA with tons of money in it. Why don't I use that money to pay off your loan and you pay me the payment? And then he charged him 3% interest. I thought, that's awesome. Fantastic. Great. Way better than I would have offered him double that interest rate. And so they got a great deal. And so even if it's like $5,000 or $10,000, start maybe asking around and say, listen, like we're only in the hole. We can prove it by our numbers. Again, tracking money is key. You've got to make sure you're doing this. But you prove that number saying this is where we're in the hole. This would help us out extremely because we can free up maybe $300 a month by paying X, Y, and Z. But the payment to you, based on the terms and everything else, is maybe $150 a month. You're still making interest, but we're also freeing up money so we can be in a better place, start paying it back faster, and eventually our goal would be to pay you back sooner than what we plan to do. And so if you look for that win-win of how can it be in somebody's best interest, the tables were reversed and were you, hey, how can I do this? How can I make a safer investment in me? So a great way is looking for personal credit, not just FICO score, but where's personal credit? So that's a great creative way to go about doing that. And I'll tell you, it can work if you're a good, wise steward of what you're doing. If you're a horrible spender and you wouldn't trust yourself with money, then I wouldn't do it either. Makes sense? You got type in the chat. Just make sure you're still with me here. Okay, great. Awesome. Okay, so one other thing you can do as well, if you want to be able to free up some money too, one thing you can also do is you can consider selling off assets. Selling off assets is a great way to be able to get some extra cash right now, because if as a steward is meant to take what they have and put it to use, put it to real use or production. If you're not going to use it, well then find a way to get rid of it, to sell it, to donate it, whatever you're going to do. You might free up some taxes that way. Things like that. So find ways to maybe sell off some assets that might be able to help be able to pay it off quicker. It may not pay off today, but it might pay off quicker. I had one summer I paid off about $2,000-3,000 of debt, not to mention kept our livelihood going because we sold off some assets, got rid of the clutter. Another thing you can do too is, even if you're a W-2 employee, you don't have a business, but maybe you do have a business and that can offset, there could be some tax advantages that can give you some benefit today. So I work with a lot of people, for example, they'll have, maybe they're the entrepreneur, but then their husband or their wife is also working outside the home in a normal employee type of job. Well, one thing you do is possibly go tax exempt or increase those exemptions on your paychecks to take home more money every month temporarily. Might be a good way to free up some cash and be able to get more cash now, because heck, even if you owed some taxes a year or so down the road, who cares? Even if you owed a little bit. Most of the time, if you got to this point of the year, most of you already paid what you need to pay in taxes just by claiming what you're supposed to be claiming. Usually about August or so, you've already made that up. So if that's the case, maybe consider raising up those exemptions higher every month, putting extra on those credit cards and paying them down faster, free up the cash flow, and heck, you free up an extra bit of money per month. Who cares if you have a tax bill later if you're now already freeing up and saving that money? In a sense, it's kind of like loaning money from the government, beforehand, so that you could pay them back later. So there's lots of ways you can do it that way. Again, check with your accountant first. Don't just take my word for it, because I'm not an accountant. But I've done that before too. In fact, I've even done that when I used to work a W-2 job. I actually worked a W-2 job until about 2004. And what was really interesting is it would come bonus time. They would do Christmas bonuses. I would actually go tax exempt the month of December, and then go right off exempt back to like 10 exemptions or whatever about the end of December, right after I got my bonus. And people would say, "Oh my goodness, Chris, how'd you get like 3/4 of it?" It's a secret. I'm just brilliant. But that was one way I did it. It's like, hey, let's go tax exempt for a time, get more of that cash, and figure out how we make it up at tax time. And heck, if you're donating assets, you might still have more write-offs anyways. So there's lots of ways to be able to figure that out or make it work to your benefit. And by the way, you can donate up to about $500 a year without itemizing. Once you go over 500, then you need to start paying what you donated to justify that much money. So that kind of stuff. Hopefully that's helpful. One place you can go to, if you haven't done this already, on my website, moneyripples.com, there's an ebook right on the main page that's called Beyond Rice and Beans, 7 Secrets to Free Up Cash Today. That's another great way to find extra cash or money that might be available to you. So check that out. Go ahead and download that online there. So that's question number 1. Was that good stuff so far? Did anybody get any ahas, even if it wasn't even related to the question? Totally. Good. Awesome. Way easier than me typing a response by message, I'll tell you that much. So I can speak a lot faster than I type, obviously. Okay. Number 2, I'm going to make this one a kind of quick one, but this was a good one brought up by one of my Wealth Acceleration Group clients that I have, who's been to one of my events. He said, "Chris, how do I find a business niche?" So how do I find my niche in business? If I'm not really in business yet, but I want to find a business, or I want to find something that would be a good business, how do I find it? Now, this one could be a long, long discussion, and this one's always a case-by-case answer, like most of these are. I would tell you this is to find a niche, it's much easier to relax and let it occur and sit in that question of what is a good niche, or what can I do that will provide value. It's much better to sit in that question and not force it. That's the first thing. From a mindset standpoint, don't force that question of, well, I gotta find a niche, I gotta find a business. If you do that, you'll end up failing at business left and right. But I will tell you this, that the best thing you can start doing is just move forward. Move forward with faith, to sit in that question and say, hey, as I start to work and do things that add value, I'm going to find that stuff out. Give you a good example. I mean, I before I became the cash flow expert and the financial advocate for the entrepreneur and all that kind of stuff, right? Before I even did that, I was actually, first I was a financial advisor, if you remember my story. The second, I quit. I vowed never to teach finance. I just teach ballroom dancing. And then after that, I eventually got back in, but I was talking to people about getting out of the rat race. That's what I was talking about a lot. But then 2007, 2008 happened, and my real estate went horrible. The business I had was bad because we were working with a lot of real estate investors who couldn't pay us. And so that's where I got in that hole. I was like 16, $8,000 or so in the month every month, in the whole every month. But what was great is because of that life experience and what was happening to me, I had to get creative. And I remember going through that tough time. I remember thinking, man, am I a charlatan or what? Because I'm hypocritical for sure, because I'm telling people how to get out of the race. I'm back in the rat race. I was out, and now I'm back in to these life circumstances. And it took a huge toll on my mind. And I remember thinking, there's got to be a purpose behind this. In fact, that was the only thing that got me through it, was there has to be a higher purpose behind what I'm going through. There has to be a reason. Because you have to understand, in 2007, I was an arrogant jerk that said, stop whining, make more money. That's pretty much it. And I didn't even really give people good examples of how to do that. Because honestly, when I did it myself, I applied proper principles, but I did it almost by accident to where I couldn't teach it. I couldn't describe how I did what I did. It took me losing almost everything to figure out what real assets I had. You know, I was almost losing everything where I found everything, right? And that's where I really start to become creative. I had how to get out of my situation, and I knew there was a reason and a purpose, and I knew that I would get out of it. I just didn't know when or how, but I knew I would. And lo and behold, by about 2009, things started to take off, and that's what you hear me talk about. In 3 years, paid off $900,000 in debt and things like that. And that's how. I mean, it eventually figured out from the cash flow secrets that I teach today. And so it was because of the life experience I had that I learned how to be creative with my cash flow, how to get myself from upside down to back to positive again, and things like that. And that's where things became better. And so finding your niche, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can do it. Life experience can be a great way. Is there something you've learned in your life that you've overcome that can help others? And what I don't want you to do is I don't like seeing people out there who are life coaches that are trying to teach people trying to life coach people, but their life is messed up. I mean, now obviously I was doing that with a financial standpoint, but I was still being integrity of what I could do, what my limits were, and what I couldn't. People said, "Hey, how can I become a multimillionaire?" I said, honestly, I can teach you how to be a 100,000-aire or whatever. Like, I haven't been a multimillionaire. I was barely a millionaire, and I lost it. There you go. So that's the thing, is that you got to still stay in integrity, but you can help people along the way. You can serve people with what you have, even if it's just getting people to point B. Maybe you can't get them to Z, but you can at least get them to B or C, and that's the key right there. Another way to find your niche is if people keep asking you the same questions over and over and over, or they keep asking you to do something for them, or maybe you did a little do-it-yourself thing that everybody wants. Well, then that's something that could definitely be turned into money, right? That's something that could be an idea that could be used to serve people. Again, listen to what people are asking you to do. Listen to what they're saying. Listen to what their problems are, because in the problems are the opportunities. And trust me, there's more problems now than ever, meaning there's more opportunities to make a lot of money than ever. And so, no matter what your situation is, if you want to find that niche, it's by walking that path. I didn't just get into the cash flow stuff. Even when I had all the cash flow tips I created initially, it still took me about another year before I started to teach on a more massive scale. And it was 2008 I created those tips, September 2008. It was about September 2009 when I started to really amp it up and really share it more. And by 2010, it was becoming more and more popular with the groups that I was working in. So just know that sometimes it takes some patience. It doesn't have to take a year or more, but it just sit with that. I mean, just be okay that it doesn't always come immediately. The more you try to force it, the more it won't come to you. So invite it. Be willing to say, I'm willing to be as patient as possible to find this niche, but I'm willing to move forward and still serve people along the way, and then I'll get better and better at serving all the time. I guarantee you I'll get better and better at serving all the time, not just in the role that I'm doing now. I'm sure that I'll be able to develop that niche better and better as time goes on. Sound good? Makes sense? So Curtis, thank you for that question. That was great. I'm going to address John's question. I think this one's a great one. These next two questions I think are really more exciting to me because they're more of a challenge. They're not easy to accomplish. They're not just simple, do this little thing and you're done. That's it. I mean, these things do take a lot of mental discipline and actual physical discipline too. So this one from John, he said, okay, how do you double a business within 6 months? How do you get a business to double their revenue within the next 6 months? Now, John, I know that you actually have quite a few ideas in this realm too, and so I think it's a great question. Let me give you my perspective. Again, I'm not a business consultant, some things I've actually seen work for me personally and for several of my clients too who have actually done this. Um, I'm gonna talk about two levels here. I'm gonna talk about the mental level you need to be at, and then I'm gonna talk about the activities you can do to help with that. So one, the mental level. Give you a great example. The thing that got me through those hardest times, that got me to start really increasing my income, was especially one was understanding how to truly how to explain this, how to truly discipline my mind, how to discipline my spirit, and be in tune with my spirit too, and be tuned with who I am. I do something every morning called the Power Hour. Some people, Anthony Robbins used to call it the hour of power. Other people call it a morning ritual. Whatever you call it, successful people, all successful people, have two things. One, they have a coach, which is true, and then two is that they also do some sort of morning ritual, something that allows them to go above and beyond their call of duty, something that gets them going in the morning, something that gets them moving. And so 3 areas I specifically focus on in the morning. One is exercise. I got to wake my body up. I can't do the other stuff without being awake. Otherwise, I fall asleep. I can't meditate first thing in the morning because I fall asleep. So one is exercise. I get my blood pumping. I get my body moving. So even this morning, I ended up doing a guerrilla workout because it was a pretty early morning where I was getting going. I knew I didn't have a whole lot of time, so I did like a little warm-up, 4-minute kick my butt with exercises, and a 4-minute cool down just to kind of get myself going and feel awake and feel mentally alert and awake. So that was one, is exercise. 2 is I do things like things that help my mind and my spirit as well. So my spirit first. So I do things like pray, meditate, read scriptures, like those kind of, like whether it's Christian or whatever you have to, Christian type scriptures or whatever, to get myself going, get my spirit going, to feel at peace, walking in nature and being in nature. I do that a lot of times with my exercise just to bring it all together, right? Things like that. And then the third one is the mental aspect is, okay, how can I learn something that I need to learn? I always laugh at people when they say, Chris, I would love to be a better marketer. I just don't know how. Well, what are you doing during your power hour to learn that? Are you studying things? So to give you an example, one of the books I'm studying, I do a lot of audiobooks, but this is the actual book I'm reading. I'm reading a book here, if you can see it, called Thou Shalt Prosper by Rabbi Daniel Lapin. Great book. Love it. It brings the spiritual and financial principles together that I love. Love that book. So this is a book I'm reading right now. I also bring other audiobooks as well. I listen to audiobooks like Leslie Householder. I'm listening to her books right now. Things like that. Things to be able to, again, kind of quicken my mind and get things going. When I do that, I realize it's like sharpening the saw. As you've always heard that example. It's not just about just sawing away like crazy like most people do. This is how you can tell a lot of people don't meditate, because they're running around with their head cut off. They got to quiet themselves. They got to still themselves. In fact, during my worst scarcity times, I would actually, part of my meditation, I would do more of a spoken meditation, which I'd repeat the words, be still and know that I am God. And now I take a word away, be still and know that I am. Be still and know, or be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still. Be. I would do that to calm myself down during the hardest times. Great way to get my mind back into focus so I can work more productively. So I'll tell you, that's one of the biggest secrets underneath. In fact, that's where I think one of my clients, where he was the ultimate example of being coachable and did everything he's supposed to do. He's making about $60,000 a year personally from his business, and even in Manhattan, which in Manhattan making $60,000 a year is nothing. But he was able to take that, and within about 3 years, I've now heard he's now bringing home, not just what he's making in his business, way more in his business, but bringing home over $300,000 a year. And a lot of it was him really being a good student of that power hour, so that morning ritual. So doing that is key. Get in the right place. Then from there is I mentioned like they always get good coaches. I would definitely get somebody that would help you in the area you're trying to get better in. If it's marketing, for example, marketing is one of those things that a lot of people don't understand. And so I remember finding the guy that was considered one of the best marketers around, would win like marketing awards, part of some of the biggest names out there. In fact, he would even teach guys like Jack Canfield how to sell and things like that, and Brian Tracy, and he would teach like all the best people, the gurus. I'm like, that's the guy I want. And so I paid for him as a coach. And I didn't really have the money at the time. I was just barely getting out of my situation. That was beginning of 2010. I'm barely getting out of my situation. I'm barely able to afford paying for him. I'll tell you the things I've learned about marketing and even the things I've taken applied since then have been invaluable and have really helped me develop my business, especially now. And so, getting the right person. If it's financial that you're having a hard time with, maybe I'm your guy. Maybe I'm not. I'd be more than willing to tell you that one for sure. Some people are for me and some people aren't. But usually people find out pretty quickly, especially if they come to my events, they'll find out pretty quickly. And so there's all these different areas that you want to focus on and get better at. And definitely business skills are key. So many people say, well, just do what you love and the money will follow, and that's false. Just do what you love that others love you doing, because they got to value it, and then the money can follow. It can follow because if you don't have the right business skills, it's not going to work. So having the right business skills is going to be key. Knowing how to market, I think just being a marketer in general is amazing. One of the most amazing skills you can have in sales and marketing. Because if you can't do those two things, even if you are amazing at what you do, you probably won't ever be heard about. And you'll be this person that's very arrogant, that's sitting there mad that people that have lesser talent than you are making more money and more successful and more public, and you're wondering why they are. And that's why. It's all about sales and marketing primarily. So those are some of the key things. Now, let's get more specific. Not just hiring a coach or not just doing that power hour, but what about activities to do? One thing I will mention is that doing daily activities, always consistently moving forward, is key. Most people I realize that don't make more money, or maybe they plateau, is because they're very inconsistent. They're kind of like this. They might turn the heat up, they start making a little bit more money, and then they turn it off, and then they go down. They have like these weird months. They don't really have, rather than just months like this, which you hope for, they're like this. They're like bipolar, right? And so some of those activities I've done is one, I have one friend actually do this, the person I work with a little bit. What they did is they actually lowered prices. Now let me talk about what I mean. That's the opposite of what you probably expected me to say. When they lowered the prices, they did this. They created an automated stream, an automated system. And so they said, instead of me, what they're doing like a 1 or 2 day event charging a few $100, which in my mind is like, wow, that's a lot of work, especially because it was in their home and things like that. I said, they said, well, we started to go back down and let's make this all online, still offer some live support, but it's more group support. So they did an online/group program, and they said, hey, we're going to charge just a small amount, $27 a month for 6 months, and that's it. Once your 6 months are done, you're done. Voila. They still pay $160 total over the 6 months. What ended up happening is they ended up tripling their revenue, tripling their income, and they actually freed up more time. Because they weren't going and doing these 2 day events. They actually got rid of the events. They're now going back to it. They now offer both. But they actually just did that, and they blew up. I mean, just exploded. They had like 1,300 people paying $27 a month. Now, do the math. That's pretty awesome, right? I mean, they're making well over $30,000 a month just with that one service, that one product, so to speak. I even offer the same thing for myself. If people aren't a good fit for me one-on-one, I actually offer them that program and same price and same kind of deal. And I take them through my process, $27 a month for 6 months. And it's amazing how it added another stream of income that's valuable. It allows me to serve people that I wouldn't normally be able to serve, which I love. Now, on the other hand, you can also raise prices too. Here's the key, is that anytime you're trying to make more money, even in the place where I just mentioned the last idea before, is that people will only pay you money if they think that what they're receiving is more valuable than what they're receiving. Here's the thing, is that you've got to make sure that, one, you have something that's valuable, and two, that that's priced accordingly. And I'll even add a third one. 3 is that you actually believe it's valuable too. Because if you don't, they definitely won't. If you have any doubt, anything that you feel in yourself will be amplified in the person you're talking to. And so looking for ways to even increase prices. I've done this with a lot of people, like chiropractors, for example. Chiropractors are the natural healers. They love what they do. They want to help and serve people. And they have this weird disconnect with money where they're like, yeah, but I want to serve people. I can't make money. They think it's this finite pie. If I serve more, well, I can just serve more at the expense of not making more money. Versus saying, the more I serve, the more money I make. They work in harmony, right? And they forget that. They realize that they're not taking away from people if people are willing to pay. If people are willing to pay you, they believe that what they're receiving is more valuable. As long as you deliver on that, don't lie, cheat, or steal in that scenario, that's great. That's what they want. So give them that. And so I'd have a lot of those people raise their prices. Sometimes, like with using the chiropractic example, maybe they're charging $35 per patient visit. I would tell them, hey, listen, marketing studies have shown that 35 is a weird threshold. If you get it up to 40, people will pay still the same price. And some people will even argue 50, they would still pay the same price. And that's kind of debatable. It could be, though. And so I said, hey, why don't you go from 35 to 40? That's $5 per patient visit. Now, the average chiropractor sees about 70 to 80 patients. So let's just say, to make it easy, math for me, say they see 100 patients a week. Well, if they raise it by $5 times 100, that's $500 a week. And then times it by 50 weeks, so that you take 2 weeks off for vacation, whatever, that's now $25,000 a year. And this may not double it, but this could increase it dramatically. Again, price increases will very unlikely double your income, but it could. Or you do some things where you create some systems, just like I was talking about before the other example, creating things more online or things that take less of your time, that allows you to spend less time making more money, therefore putting more focus on activities where you can make more money. And I've seen people, including myself, do it time and time again where they double their income, and not just double it once, but double it again and again. It's very, very possible. I'm actually on track to double my revenue again this year from what it was the previous year. And so there's lots of ways to do that, but it does take, for example, to really have that focus and that discipline, that belief. You gotta have that faith that you know that you can make these things happen. So many people give up before they even try. They'll say, well, I like to do it, but procrastination is one of the biggest money suckers. It's like a money vampire, right? Procrastination is one of the biggest money drainers you can ever have. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest money leaks I see in my business is not the money that you're paying out. It's not like the taxes you're overpaying, which you probably are. It's not like the money you're losing from not tracking your money, the money from debt or whatever it might be, or from overpaying on insurances or this or that. It's not from that at all. More likely than not, the biggest money leak you have is the money you never earn in the first place because, one, you've lacked the belief, or two, you're not taking action on it. And so the action's got to follow the belief. There's got to be both. I get really turned off by people that are so principle-based and so hypothetical. I love principles. It's got to be principles first and strategy second. You got to make sure both are working in harmony. But when you have people only talking about principles, but they're never doing, there's no wisdom. There's just knowledge, but there's no wisdom. Wisdom comes from actually doing it. And the more you go and do something, the more you'll see it'll happen. And you'll see the right people being attracted to you as either customers or clients, things like that. You'll see it happening a lot. So how do you double it within 6 months? I'll tell you, that's it. It's focusing purely on the cash flow. Fastest way to the cash is a great question. What's my fastest way to the cash? What are people asking for right now, and how can I deliver it to them, to give it to them? Because if they keep asking me this question, and I actually got from that book, one funny story. Actually, no, not from that book. It's actually from another book, which just happens to be right here. Acres of Diamonds by Russell Conwell. He was a guy that created Temple University. Great book. He talks about the same economic principle here, where he used to run a general store, and he'd get mad that people would keep asking for a certain product. And he'd say, well, why people keep asking me for this? He said, now in hindsight, had he looked back, he would have said, let me figure out how to get that for you and sell it to you. How can I give that to you? Even when I got done, started speaking, I remember people would say, can you speak on this, Chris? I'm like, yes, I do. Or yes, I can. Or, I can speak on this. Here's a little bit I can focus on that will tie in with what you're talking about there. Here's my focus. And people are like, great, let's have you speak. And that's why, it's rare that I don't have at least 3 to 4 speaking opportunities every week. It's just because I started that ball rolling and getting it going. And by the way, my ideal life vision used to say that I was hoping to speak just once a week. That was my ideal last year, 2013. Now 2014, I'm thinking, if I only speak 2 or 3 times, that's a slow week. So again, standards keep going up. Just like money, your belief as it keeps increasing can also do the same as well. So it's got to start from there. And again, it's all about delivering that value. That's the core. Stop asking, how can I make more money? Instead ask, how can I create more value to where money is the natural result? It's very, very scientific, very principle-oriented. It just falls away. So additional products or services are great, but it does have to take more time. That's the good news. I don't necessarily recommend going out for a job. Type in a quick chat. Just make sure you're still here with me. fact, even type, what are some ideas you got just from now? Like, what were some ideas that you think maybe you can go implement so far? And I want to kind of hear from those of you on this thing right now. What are some of the good things you've gotten so far that you can actually go and apply? In fact, I hope that you go and apply it today. We still got one more point, but I want to kind of check in to see what you're doing. Stop procrastinating. Yes. Yes, thank you. I wish more entrepreneurs would get that one because they get passed up that sometimes aren't as good as they are just because people are procrastinating or they doubt themselves, things like that. So focus on the mental game. Absolutely, John. You and I both know working with people in business that that's the case. It's more of a mental game than it is just a strategy game, isn't it? Strategies are easy. The mental game's the hard part. Greater discipline in the morning routine. So agree, Trisha. That's such a true thing. So agree with that one. Good. Interesting that a lot of this stuff, even though there's strategies, sometimes it is more of a mental thing, isn't it? And I'll tell you, when people say it's 90% mental, I really think it's a falsity. I think it's a falsehood. I would say it's at least 98 to 99% mental, and then 1 to 2% of it's actually real application. There still has to be application, but man, if the seeds are being planted in infertile soil, it's not going to grow, right? And so if you want to see fruit, you want to bear fruit, you got to have the good soil. You plant those seeds in first, and then when you plant those seeds, watch what happens. So yeah, I talk a lot about that in my event as well, just because I'll tell you, abundance and scarcity, those are the two battles that we deal with every day. That it's the one thing that stops us from being creative. It puts a block. I talk about money ripples, and it implies that there has to be flow. I talk about cash flow. Money has to flow. Exchange has to flow between you and other people. If you're not willing to accept money, then people won't accept money from you, and then everything stops, and then you don't make money, right? Same thing if it's just the value. There has to be a value flow too. And I've seen that to be true in all cases, that there has to be a flow. When you're in scarcity, you stop the flow. But when you're in abundance, you're willing to move things faster. It's just like bicycle pedaling, right? You start pedaling that bicycle. What most people do in business or with money in general, they pedal a little bit, they get really fast, they wear themselves out, and they stop pedaling. And then they slow to a creep, they freak out, they start pedaling fast again, and then they stop. And then they slow to almost a complete stop, and then they pedal again. If you just start pedaling, and you don't have to pedal fast, to start pedaling and getting that momentum going, you'll start to notice that it's easier and easier to pedal. Then pretty soon, it starts to feel like it's working itself. You're like, wait a minute, I can start flowing. I can start moving. And in fact, I'm moving faster with less effort. And I've seen that be true in business, is that, the first year or so, I felt like I was really pedaling hard. I was working at least 40 hours a week. I know that doesn't sound like a lot to some entrepreneurs. To me, it is, right? I became an entrepreneur for lifestyle and freedom and control, things like that. Now, even though I'm making more money, but I'm working a lot less because I've got that going. See if I stop pedaling, that what happens is, and this is what happens a lot of people when they lack belief. They say, well, it's summertime, I can't do stuff. Well, hey, what am I doing right now? I'm doing stuff because I realize that that's when everybody's stopping. One of the biggest things that have helped me increase my income is I've done what George Costanza says in one of the Seinfeld episodes: do the opposite. So when everybody stops marketing in July and August, especially, they just kind of take a break, and then they try to pick things back up in September. I just keep marketing. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do more webinars. I'm going to do the opposite of what I want to do, or what I naturally am inclined to do. I'm going to do the opposite, just see what happens. And that's going to be my mantra for the year. And as I've done the opposite, I don't. You notice I don't do joint webinars with people that have nothing to do with my business. If I do a joint webinar, that's got to flow into the same conversation, not two segmented conversations of, here, learn about this and learn about this. Like, I don't want to attend those webinars. Why would anybody else? So therefore, I do webinars I want to attend, right? You may not, some people may not want to. Obviously, those of you on here do, but it's getting that pedaling going and moving it through. And what it's doing for me is that it's making September and October and November and even into December way easier. So that's big. All right. So I know the clock's ticking. So let me get to the last question here. And this one was given by an old neighbor of mine, and she's actually a professor at a college. Her husband, does things with accounting and whatnot within his company. But this one was how to take 3 months off each year. So her big thing is she's right now in France, and she's been traveling Europe for this summer, and she's loving it. And she's a brilliant woman too, by the way, just so you know, like brilliant woman. We were amazed that when she went through the period of time being a stay-at-home mom. This one was like almost like a rocket scientist. I mean, did like microbiological engineering. I don't know what the heck, but it was something like that. I mean, very brilliant woman. And I don't even know if she's even teaching that line of work even now. But now she's gotten into her mid 40s, and now she's like, you know what? I want to start taking time off. I'm loving being in Europe. I would like to do this each and every year. So how can I take time off each and every year, especially taking those 3 months off? How do I make it work? Now, she said she had a few ideas in her own mind. So I'm going to give a few ideas as well, because honestly, I like this. I like this question. This is actually something I've spent quite a bit of time doing myself to try to get to this point. This is why I might work 20 to 30 hours a week, doing what I'm doing. Everybody can choose how they want. I got this big idea. I actually saw this, the first time I saw this being a possibility was when I was a financial advisor. There was actually a guy who said he used to be a financial advisor. He would work his tail off 6 months out of the year and then vacation 6 months out of the year. And so he would just do that. And I thought, wow, is that really possible? A great book to help expand on this more, because I'm not going to expand on it nearly as much as he does, is a guy by the name of Tim Ferriss. Now, there's a book called The 4-Hour Workweek. The book, there's some things that are outdated, resource or whatever that's in that book that don't really work anymore. But the principles and the concepts behind it are great. I can't tell you how it opened up my vision of the possibility of creating systems and creating things to allow you to step away. So this is going to be a different question for different people. If you're a business owner, this is more possible. But the hard thing with being a business owner is oftentimes people become solopreneurs, become kind of they end up owning a job instead of owning a business. The first thing you need to make sure you're doing in your business is creating systems to where it can operate on its own. Can it run without you? So for example, I talk about not doing marketing during a period of time. Is there a way to kind of make it easy to where you can get the marketing going and moving? I laugh when people tell me, they're like, man, I've seen your stuff on Facebook. You're everywhere. And I laugh because I'm like, honestly, I'm pretty much right here. I'm not going to show you, but I got this nice shirt on now, but I've got my running shorts on underneath. So there you go, right? I don't always have to leave the house to do what I do every day. That's the beauty of the systems and tools that are out there. Be able to do a webinar at home and allow you to reach you in your home. Because I've realized that live events during the summer don't work great. But hey, if you can be at home, maybe webinars will work better than just having you show up to a location where people are busy with reunions and vacations and all this other stuff going on. And so I like to use tools like this. In fact, I did one of my webinars from Washington State. So I'll give you an example. Last December, I took off most of the month. But here's the cool thing. Even when I was vacationing, I was doing little bits of work along the way. So I did one of my webinars right from my mom's art gallery. Did that. Actually got a new client from it. So the cool thing is that a week later, I find out the client's there. I said, oh shoot, well I'm on vacation. Go ahead and send them to my CPA, because obviously they need some tax help. Cool thing is, by the time I had my first meeting with them, it was about the end of December or so. I had my first meeting with them, and they said, hey, we talked to your accountant. We already found over $10,000. I'm like, sweet, you found more than what you've paid. We're done. No, just kidding. But it was kind of cool to see that happening. It's like, cool, well, now we can make things work better. Now I can add more value, and I didn't have to be there necessarily. So systems are key. How can you put more systems in your business where you don't have to be there, or you don't have to always be the one doing it? This might include hiring out people. One of the hardest things I've noticed for people, but I love hiring people. When I make more money, I like to hire people. That's one way, because I know if more people I can hire, especially if I hire from their gifts and their talents and their abilities, I can expand and grow. So as an entrepreneur, you've got a lot to do that. You can definitely easily take time off, be working from wherever, because of technology, because of creating systems in your business that make it possible. The honest truth is that I can live anywhere I really want as long as I have an internet connection and a phone. And even that phone can be limited, because technically I could say, hey, I'm not going to coach. I could hire a coach, train them to do the same thing, and be able to go do my own stuff and speak from wherever I am, right, whenever I feel like. So there's all kinds of opportunities there. Everybody's different, but there's ways to do that. So look for leverage. How do you leverage other people's time? Can you leverage other resources? Can you leverage technology? Can you leverage other people's, not just time, but talents as well? How can you use that to your advantage to to make it a win-win for everybody. Really a win-win-win. Win for the people you might hire if you're hiring people, and win for the people that you're still serving. How can they still get good value so they don't say, this person's just vacationing, they're not doing anything to help me out, right? So don't make it so self-labor intensive. Now, for my friend who she works more as an employee, here's some ideas that you'd be able to take 3 months off to go to France every year. One way to do this is, and you mentioned this a little bit, but yes, creating streams of income at home help. Now, granted, if you have a spouse that's working, that does help as well. But creating streams of income can help. This is where things like real estate investing can be a great opportunity, especially if you have property managers, so you don't have to be fixing toilets and things like that. So if you have the ability to do so, even if you've got IRAs or 401ks, things like that, you can possibly use that money to use in things like real estate investing. And even if you don't have money, you can always find a partner who does. You be the one that has the skills. If you've developed the skills to do so, you can do things like real estate to bring in more cash flow while you're doing it. Again, this is for someone who's more just an employee. When you're in business, you can create all kinds of streams that make it really easy with online products and things like that, or coaching or products that don't involve you to be there, right? But for employees, this is a very different story. There's less options in a lot of ways, but they're still there. The next thing I'd have you consider too is, could you become a consultant in the area you're going to? So for example, somebody I knew was a professor at Notre Dame. One thing he would do is that when he was off in the summer times, he would actually go to Germany each year. He would go and be a business consultant in Germany. He taught business classes at Notre Dame. He would go and be a business consultant in Germany. He would go to like the automakers or whoever else, these different companies, and help them. Cool thing is he even got the university to help pay for it all, for him to travel and do stuff, even though he got paid a separate check, and a lot of times made more money as a consultant than he did as a professor. And Notre Dame pays pretty nicely, I'll tell you that much. Not every university will help out in this way, but you're still able to give those sabbaticals that will be really go. And so those are cool things you can do that way. So finding a way to be a consultant. Can you earn money while you're there? Again, earning money while you're there as a consultant does not mean you have to be working 24/7. You might be working only for a few weeks out of that 3 months, but it might be 3 weeks though, or maybe it's a few more weeks, but maybe it's on and off. However it works, see if there's possibilities of becoming a consultant in those areas. That way you don't really have to, you can kind of work and play all at the same time. I love it. And as a business owner, I call those bizcations. Like last December, take a bizcation where I go travel, still do a little bit of business, still keep things running, but still be on vacation, enjoy time with family, and play a lot too. I like to work hard, play hard, right? So that's one thing I consider too as a consultant. Here's the third thing I'd have you consider as well. And this is a little bit different, and this one you'd actually see a little bit of this in the 4-hour work week too, is if this is something that brings you a lot of enjoyment, if taking this time off is really important to you, you might consider saying, well, okay, well, how would I make this work? One thing to consider is if you're saving for retirement right now, like if you're saving to a 401k or an IRA, could you not use that same money to then retire right now? What if you could just work 9 months and then retire the other 3 months of the year? Now, some people freak out about this because they say, well, what about retirement? Well, what about retiring now while you're healthy and alive? Because you can work later. Now, maybe there's an opportunity you can't work later. This is why you might want things like disability insurance or long-term care, things like that can help out expense-wise. But what about doing it right now? I love, of course, if I can find ways to make money while I'm not working, it's great. Of course, I love that. But if you're considering, you're saying, I really don't know how I can make this happen. Well, could you possibly be able to find ways to just say, hey, I'm saving up X amount of dollars every year to this IRA or this 401k, this retirement account. Why not use those same monies to help me do what I'm doing for 3 months out of the year? Theoretically, even if you were breaking even every month, if you're able to save 25% of what you have, that would enable you to do that. Maybe less, because it might be cheaper, may or may not be cheaper than living in the U.S. by going on vacationing and doing stuff. Could you rent out your home while you're gone? Things like that. Could you rent out things while you're gone? That could be other ways to make money too. If you're saying, hey, I'm not going to use this. I'm not going to use my car. Let's rent it out to somebody for 3 months. Let them use it and then get it back after 3 months or something like that. You can be really creative with this. But I would say, what about your retirement? If you're putting money away in the savings retirement, why not use that now to enjoy your retirement right now? And And who's to say that those life experiences and the people's lives you were able to touch while you're traveling may not be very, very impactful. So those are just some of the ideas. There's lots of things you do too. Again, my ebook, Beyond Rice and Beans, is a great one to show ways to find and free up cash, help with that nature. But I would just, again, consider the possibilities of how to make it happen. Don't say I can't make it happen. How can I make that a reality? So there's lots of ways that, again, there's limitless ways that I'm not even mentioning that I bet you could create on your own as well. So wow, 4 questions go by fast. Great questions. Thank you so much for your questions today. One thing I want to offer to you guys, I've got a special going on right now. I mentioned my Wealth Empowerment Intensive that's coming up October, the evening of the 16th, and then all day the 17th. I would love to have each of you there. At this place, I actually show people how to find and free up cash, how to keep their money, and how to make more. Very powerful, very impactful. The first day, that evening, we actually play the abundance game. I love this game. If you want to, the only way you can't do real life application is if you can at least simulate it and then apply it to real life. You learn so much more, way better than just lecturing. So we played that the first night. Amazing game. I've had people that hate board games show up and love this game. So try, please join us for that. And that's just free, open to the public anyways. But then the next day, from 9 to 6 on the 17th, that's a Friday, October 17th, we go and we start hitting hard into these 3 areas. We start figuring out how you can be more in abundance than scarcity. How you can start finding that cash flow. How do you start keeping it? Make sure you don't just make it all and then lose it all. How do we make sure we keep it and then make more on top of it in our business? In fact, I'm working out a guest speaker right now that I'm really excited about. Actually, a local celebrity here in Utah that we're looking to nail him down right now. I won't say who it is because he's not nailed down yet, but lots of fun. Lots of great ways to learn it and have fun. It's not about being cheap. It's about how to have your cake and eat it too. How can you not live off rice and beans? Live off more than that and enjoy your life and build your businesses and be able to make things bigger and bigger. Very non-traditional. If you've ever heard traditional financial advice, you won't hear it here. And I guarantee that you're going to get way more value than whatever you put into it. Because, oh my gosh, I mean, the information I give is priceless. It's amazing what you'll take away with this. And I've had people walk away and make hundreds of dollars a month, sometimes thousands of dollars extra a month just from going to this one event. And so this event, again, is all day October 17th and the evening prior on the 16th, right in Salt Lake City. To go find that, I'll go ahead and post a link for you guys later. I'll send an email with the link and also the promo code so you guys can do that. This is normally $500 as an early bird rate. It goes up to almost $1,000 here next month. But for you guys, for a couple, for 2 people to come, it'll be $197. That's it. Just $197. And that includes lunches, lunches on Friday as well. So you get food even on that day. So lots of great stuff. Love to have you there. So if you can be there, awesome. We're going to play. We're going to have tons of fun. And you're going to learn a ton. You thought you learned a lot here. Wait till then. Way better than just an hour webinar. So anyways, appreciate your guys' time today. Thank you so much. If you have questions, let me know. You can email me, chris@moneyripples.com. Some of you Facebook me. That's great too. Anyways, appreciate your time. You guys have a great and prosperous day.